What has happened? There was a Republican tsunami that swept across the fruited plain. What happened to the Connecticut Republicans? I can't believe this. I come on this show week after week, and I'm always losing to Al Robinsons on these election nights. It's killing me. I'm a Connecticut Republican. I'm so embarrassed I'm putting a bag on my head. I don't know where to turn. Welcome and good evening, and welcome once again to the Marty Heiser Show, where you always get the truth. Sometimes it's a cold, hard truth, like the Republicans in Connecticut did not win the congressional seat that was up. Jim Himes, re-elected, or it would appear so. Chris Murphy, re-elected. Yet you look across the fruited plain, you watch the returns come in hour after hour on election night on Tuesday night, and one after another. Wisconsin, forget about it. They all went Republican. Ohio, Pennsylvania, governors, don't get me started on the governors. Who the heck is our governor? Is it Governor Malloy? Is it Governor Foley? We don't even know yet. The numbers coming out of Bridgeport, it's a Connecticut-wide embarrassment. Someone didn't print enough ballots. What were they thinking? I'm very frustrated. And it's nights like tonight, if we can get a shot of Al Robinson, you'll find him at the end of the table there. He'll have the Cheshire cat grin on, and he'll be smiling, and he's going to have to explain to me and this august panel of very intelligent men what the heck happened. How could this wave that swept across the country somehow miss the nutmeg state? What are we doing wrong? What message isn't getting through? How are we not bonding with the people? So anyways, that's going to be the outline for tonight's show. There's some questions. I got a lot of questions, and that's why we have Bob McGuffey from Right Principles. Thank you very much for joining us again. He represents kind of the Tea Party aspect of things. And then from the Ivy League halls of intellectualism, we have
oh my. Are you okay? You gonna make it?
I'm okay. I'm just a little frustrated but we have Jim Bolano, who is here, who is also an adjunct professor at Westcon University. And we have Dave Straight, a financial analyst extraordinaire, who's done a great job. And of course we have Al Robinson, the guy down there grinning, the guy down there who's going to say, "I told you so." Did we have any bets on some of these races or anything?
You owe a lot.
I'm going to say. But anyways, I want to open it up. I'd like to start with Al Robinson. Al, explain to me what happened and how this wave that swept across the country somehow missed Connecticut.
Well, there's several factors. I think the most important thing you have to look at is this. I've said it several times. You had a lot of weak candidates. I don't think you had a lot of weak candidates, like the candidate in the first district, Ann Brickley. Horrible, got destroyed. I think she maybe got 36% of the vote. Janet Peckinpah, an awful candidate, ran an awful campaign, maybe 33, 34% of the vote. The two races I always wanted to look at was, of course, the Jim Himes, Dan DiVasello, because of the Gold Coast, and as it turned out, that Jim Himes won that race. And Chris Murphy, although some of the polls I think were wildly inaccurate, wound up handily beating Sam Caligiuri, and actually beat him in every district here in Danbury again. So one of the things I want to just emphasize here is that, look, I think 2010 was the big year for Republicans in Connecticut. You had your best chance of doing some major stuff. Republicans historically, especially in the U.S. Senate race, haven't had a deep field of candidates. If you couldn't win in 2010 with all the angst and anger with Obama and all that stuff, I think that somebody should look at what the chairman leadership, Chris Healy, who spent $100,000 tried to prove that Susan Bicewicz was not qualified for the secretary for the position that she was running for. Maybe that could have been used towards some races. I think the Republicans should take a long, deep breath and take a long time.
It's funny you mentioned Susan Bicewicz, because who's certifying or attempting to that Malloy has won the governor's race? Who is it?
That's a whole.
I'm just saying, who is it?
That's something we should talk about in terms of Should towns and municipalities, all 169 of them, buy every ballot for every voter, for every registered voter?
Oh,
And I like to see, out of all 169 municipalities, have they bought every single ballot for every single registered vote?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to be that way because of price constraints. And for me personally, I think it's absolutely outrageous.
I mean, it's funny because government wastes money on everything.
On everything.
Overbuy everything.
I have no problem with wasting money on my vote.
They can't run the photocopy machine for another minute and make sure that there are enough ballots for everyone.
I think it's outrageous.
I think people should buy their own ballots. You want to vote? Buy a ballot. Why not?
Whoa. That's dangerous.
I think that's uncommon.
But it's a serious problem. How can you order 22,000 ballots for Bridgeport of all areas?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
No, I looked it up here. They had like 21,000 ballots, and they had something like 65,000 registered voters ready to vote. And they came up short. As a matter of fact, if you really look at it, it may have hurt the Democrats more. Because there were people waiting in line, getting frustrated, and finally saying, well, the heck with this, and walking away. And how do you capture those votes?
And let's just take out partisan politics. You're disenfranchising somebody's vote. And then when you say you're going to keep the polls open to 10 o'clock, and you just say people can just come back and vote, like, wait a second, that doesn't even seem right. If anything, you should say people who are in line as of 8 o'clock can vote until 10. Lock the doors, nobody else can come in. But it's a lot of problems. I think this is going to go into court. But again, disenfranchising somebody's right to vote is outrageous. I think Democrats and Republicans can agree both on that.
Has anybody blamed Bush for that yet? It's never too late, right?
Listen, I don't know. We've kind of turned the page on the campaign. But Jim, you're a student of this. What happened? Break it down for us. You explain to me the voters in the state of Connecticut.
Well, maybe a geographic thing because we're on Long Island Sound, so we can't get tsunamis. We're blocked off by Long Island, so maybe that's it. But the other side of it is, I just think it just says a lot about the East Coast and Connecticut. I came here in 1995, and I've always found that Connecticut seems to have this kind of identity crisis, that where we sit between New York and Massachusetts, and the allegiances in sporting teams are split.
Yeah.
They never know where they are. And on Tuesday night, we did just that. We reinforced that. We became a little bit of Massachusetts and a little bit of New York. We just stayed blue.
Yeah.
And I don't understand it, really, especially in the 4th and 5th districts, like Al said, if this would have been the year. But it's a state that, other than probably Fairfield County, it's a Democratic state, or it's a Rhino Republican state who just aren't really happy with either conservative or Tea Party type Republicans, and the government unions in this state are also very strong. I don't think you can count that out. We're a state that's heavy on government unions. Connecticut used to be a big manufacturing state, and something like, I think, 60% of the unionized workers in Connecticut are government unions. They really aren't unions here anymore. They're government unions. And that's another problem, because those folks are in there to elect people, to give them more benefits and give them more stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it signals a major problem going forward for Connecticut.
Yeah. Bob.
Indeed.
Yeah, I'm seeing all this stuff about the Tea Party. The Tea Party this. You guys are right. You might form a third party. You're just sweeping everything. You're getting Scott Brown elected in Massachusetts. You're winning in New Jersey. You're winning everywhere. What happened here? Where's the beef? What's going on?
Several things. I do not agree that it is a deep Democrat blue state. If you remember 4 years ago, there were 3 of the 5 congressional districts were held by Republicans. So that could come back. Our gripe. Hey, listen, we were out there. Our candidates were Tea Party candidates were beat in all the congressional districts by the existing party leadership. They thought they knew better, as they always have, but they don't stand for anything. It's Rhino leadership.
Okay, hold on a second. So you're saying you put up candidates in the Republican primary.
Yes.
And they did not prevail.
No.
So the candidate that was chosen by who you described as the party, the
leadership.
Leadership, so they weren't necessarily your guys in the fight.
No. No, they were not.
Now, are you suggesting
in both the Senate race as well, the Senate race and...
Who was your guy in the Senate race, Schiff?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Schiff
ours
was
is
your
Schiff.
guy.
We
So
told
you
her
think
right
Schiff-
off the bat, McMahon could spend all the money she wanted, but she'd never capture the women's vote because I told them to right to their faces in the McMahon campaign that from Labor Day to Election Day they'll be playing on the YouTube clips of the degradation of women and others and minorities and handicapped people that have been done in the ring in the world wrestling, and they're going to turn off a sector of the vote that's going to be necessary to get past the
So
Republicans.
Peter Schiff is a candidate for Senate. He wins.
I think he would have won.
Wow.
I think he would have been able to carry the day. But the other,
It's an interesting
the other five
perspective.
As well.
I mean,
the other
it's,
five
you know,
as well.
very
I mean,
interesting.
we know that the party was active. We know that the party was actively working to marginalize the candidates that the Tea Party put forward. But the problem's deeper than that, and it is in the party leadership, and they don't believe in the principles on which the party's been supposed to have been operating for the last 100 years, at least since the 1912 election, of limited government, fiscal responsibility, individual freedom. Every once in a while they take those out and trot them out in an election year, but they don't believe in them. They believe in compromise. There's too many liberals running the Republican Party, and that's one of the major problems. And you know that has to be addressed.
This show is a call-in show, so the number is 438-2003, 438-2003. If you have some questions for our panel of experts, don't hesitate to call in, because we're all trying to make heads or tail of it. And frankly, many people on this panel are a little upset with Al Robinson and his smugness down there, and we just want to figure out what's going on and what we're going to do forward.
Unreal.
So Al,
Yes.
what happened in Bridgeport?
Well, the situation in Bridgeport, it's not as complex. It's not a conspiracy theory. I think we talked yesterday on another show about this, so I'll just talk about it again. All right. In government, you have a town clerk and you have the register of voters. The town clerk is responsible for the absentee ballots. The register of voters are responsible for the ballots, ordering the ballots, and counting the ballots, and certifying them. They just didn't order enough ballots. It was idiotic. I couldn't believe that in a state in which you would think that in terms of Democrats, with Foley and Bill Finch, that they would make sure that they would get as many votes as possible out of Bridgeport, including Jim Himes. They needed Bridgeport. So you think they take care of the ballots and everything will be straightened out.
Yeah.
The mayor has promised an investigation into this after the election is over. We're going to find out exactly what happened. But I think, I think there's a lot of questions that should be asked about how we're going to be handling these new ballot machines and ordering of ballots. Should there be one ballot for every single vote, or should ballots be ordered based upon the turnout of previous elections? And I think that's something that the General Assembly is going to have to work out for themselves. But I'm very concerned again because, in my personal opinion, I think cost should be not a factor when it comes to somebody's voting. It should be one ballot, maybe two ballots for every single person that votes. So you make sure that if you mess up with a ballot, you can get another one. I'm not comfortable when you talk about budgeting and spending. You should do whatever you can to secure my right to vote. It's a fundamental right as me as an American citizen to make sure I have the right to vote. If I show up at a poll, I should be able to vote. And that didn't happen in Bridgeport. I feel very sorry for the people who stood in lines for over an hour or so and got disenfranchised and went back home frustrated. It's unfair.
You know, when I heard that there was voting irregularity in Bridgeport, I'm just going to come clean. I'm going to lay it on the table here because we always, you know, we always get the truth and everything like that. When I first heard that, I said, because we were talking about, you know, walking around money and everything like that, irregularities, okay, what's going on? But I've looked into this thing, and if anything, it's probably much worse for the Democrat side than the Republican
And again, this is a nonpartisan thing. As you know, the register of voters, there's two. There's a Democrat and a Republican register of voters. So this is not a partisan thing. It's a fundamental breakdown of two knuckleheads there doing the wrong thing, trying to save a buck.
All right, Jim, and then Bob.
I was just going to say, unless, as Al said, when you kept the polls open, you got extra people in there. With the race that tight, depending what the final numbers are, it might have given Malloy an advantage because you have extra people coming out when they shouldn't have. But clearly he's right about the turning people away is unacceptable.
Yeah, I'm trying to play out this conspiracy. Like, okay, guys, this is what we're going to do. We're not going to print enough ballots, and this is what's going to happen. People are going to be frustrated in line, and they're going to walk away. But don't worry, because we're going to appeal to some judge, and the judge judge is going to dictate that you got to keep the polls open for 2 hours. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go try and find all those people that walked offline, and we're going to tell everyone that, you know, it's okay, come on back and vote, and we're going to get a bunch of extra votes. Who's with me? I mean, I don't know. It seems like a pretty far-fetched conspiracy.
Well, I went there at 4 o'clock.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I wanted to see what this was all about in Bridgeport. So I went to the Blackham Middle School, and I was standing outside, and there were a lot of people coming. It was a pretty heavy flow. There was a voter attorney representing outside. There were people coming out with a couple of funky stories, but nothing too big. All of a sudden, the line is backing up, and we understand they ran out of ballots. I went inside into the gymnasium and stood there looking around, and people were coming up, and they were getting checked in, and then the other side of the gym was packed with people waiting for ballots. I was standing there with someone who's from the party, from the Republican Party, from the RTC. He was on the phone with the registrar, and he said that the cops were bringing some ballots down right now by a squad car. Before the cops get there, all of a sudden, paper ballots appear in the gymnasium. All of a sudden, the line is moving. They're not from the cops. The line is moving now, and they're getting ballots. Earlier, they were told there were no more folders left because the people were coming up to go to the scanner with open ballots. Now there were folders. And people coming around, and in this whole big voting place, there were only about 7 booths to sign and fill out. And I start noticing some people are going into the booth and filling them out. Others are drifting past all the booths and going right over to the scanner line. Interesting. You make your own deductions about why and how that could be occurring. They're getting ballots. They're not touching the ballots with a pencil or a pen. They're going past the voting booths and getting online for the scanner, and there was stuff in the ballots in the side of the scanner box because they were paper. So you can deduce maybe what was going on there.
But these were legitimate registered voters that had been signed in, and a Republican gets to look at their ID, and a Democrat gets to look at their ID, and they check off, and they say, okay, wait over there because we're waiting for ballots.
Yeah, they were waiting. But the key is that there were paper ballots in that building. Although for 20 minutes or more, there was none being given out, and they had called for the registrar. But before the cops got there, all of a sudden, a stack of them appear on a table.
Well, and they made copies, I guess.
Now they're giving them to people. Yeah, but it's very funny that people were being able to vote without filling them out.
Well, how can you vote without filling them out? You can't vote without filling them out. You have to fill them out.
We've heard of that, though. Right?
Well,
use deductive reasoning.
You've also talked about $250,000 in street money and ministers doing other stuff.
Well, if you're not filling them out, you're getting them pre-filled out.
Well, this show will be shown on Cablevision, so I hope you can file a complaint with the Secretary of State's office or something, because people in Bridgeport will be seeing this.
As you said last week.
Well, I'm waiting for you to fill it out. Fill out a complaint. I'll make a phone call.
I didn't ID anybody. I wasn't in a position. I'm just telling you what I observed.
I don't know.
And it wasn't everybody. It was not everybody. Some of them were walking past the booths and getting right online and voting.
Again, we'll be on Cablevision. We get a sworn affidavit out of you and get something out of this. We'll get to the bottom of it. We get to the truth here.
All right.
All righty.
Well, look, to me, I vote all the time. You walk in there, you have to have a photo ID. You walk up to there's a Democrat, there's a Republican,
Absolutely.
they're observing it.
You don't have to. I asked the voting person about that, the attorney. In the state law is that you do not have to have any ID on you. You have to say you are Bob McGuffey, check on the list. If your name is on the list and you have no ID, you sign a piece of paper that says, I attest I'm Bob McGuffey, I'm filling out my ballot.
You have to have... The state law is you can either have an identification card, or you have to have something proving that you are the individual that you're talking about. Maybe a utility form, utility bill, things of that sort. You just can't walk in there.
Maybe that's to register.
A moment of your time, please. You can't walk in there with nothing at all. Just say, hey, I'm Al Robinson. I'll swear to
most assuredly you can.
It doesn't do that. And again, there's a Republican and a Democrat person monitored, so there's no partisan shim-sham or anything like that going on.
I
think you should be very careful with some of the stuff you're saying here.
But I'm repeating what the attorney told me out in front.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if you're a Republican,
Jim, your thoughts.
A Republican or a conservative or a libertarian, one of the points you're making is that government's broken, it doesn't work very well, and I think you just attribute that incident to that.
You know, it's interesting because there was a commentary
that they're too smart.
There's a commentary. You know, the register of voters and these people. It's a classic case. You've got one day every 2 years that you got to have your act together. One day. And the government can't seem to get its acts together for one day. You know, they have the ballots there. So I don't know. I try to look at this thing rather objectively. And I think the process is probably as transparent as it's going to be. You know, there's certain areas of the state that just always, I mean, you know, long before we were around here, they were voting, you know, one way over the other. So these trends aren't unusual. If anything, it just seemed like it was a bureaucratic mess up. Now, I'd like to take the conversation from the local Connecticut races. And Jim, you're a professor of this kind of thing. What happened across the country, and what's the historical precedent for that?
Well, there's not much historical precedent in that it's a, well, there may be, but the 60 vote, 61, 62 vote pickup in the House is historic, back to the 1930s or so.
1938. Yeah.
So that is significant. It outdoes the '94 Republican Revolution. But what I think you're seeing, and as I look at it, is there really has been a trend. And in 1972, the Democrats nominated George McGovern. They went far left in the 60s and early 70s, and Richard Nixon carried 49 states. And they gave it to Jimmy Carter after Watergate, and in 1980 they blew them out and gave Ronald Reagan a Reagan Revolution. They got a little soft on it, and Bill Clinton came in with the help of a Tea Party type Reform Party and gave him the election. And 2 years later,
Ross Perot.
Ross Perot.
Yeah,
they put the Republicans in office, and now in 2008 they gave Barack Obama and the Democrats the Congress, and in 2 years they've blown them out again, at least in the House. And I think what it says is that the country, maybe not Connecticut, but the country is center-right, and they don't like strong liberal policies. And that's the message the country is sending. We're not hearing it here. But something like 26 state houses are now controlled by Republicans. And the key to that is it's 2010, and the census is here, and they're going to redraw those districts. And in those states, they're going to redraw them for Republicans. Not here. It's going to stay the same way probably for the next 10 years.
Well, just to follow your historic narrative there, Richard Nixon gets caught with his hand in the cookie jar on the whole Watergate thing. People are upset and frustrated and disheartened, disenchanted with government, and they vote in Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter thinks it's a mandate and starts, changing the foreign policy, saying, well, it has to be all dictated by human rights. All of a sudden, the Iran-Contra thing happens, and lo and behold, he gets knocked out of there by Ronald Reagan. Then after Reagan's in there, Bill Clinton comes in, or after Bush, and Bill Clinton starts to try and do a lot of this liberal stuff. And then in the off-year election, he gets knocked out, and here comes Newt Gingrich with the contract for America, or on America. And it does seem like it's constantly self-correcting. Here comes Barack Obama, and if we can get a couple of these pictures, this is the most recent vintage Barack Obama. This is covered in the New York Times. But he comes in, and frankly, everyone was a little tired of George Bush, 2 wars that continued on, and then this economic crisis unfolds, and everyone's houses lose money, everyone's 401ks go down, and everything. And people didn't so much want to hire Barack Obama as they just wanted to fire George Bush. And he was a nice guy, had a great message and stuff like that. But Barack Obama, and these are some of the other ones, he comes in and he figures he's got a mandate. We're going to change everything. And you're saying this is a reaction to that.
It's another reaction to it. The difference is, 72, they called them the silent majority. 1980, they were Reagan Democrats. 92, they were Reform Party people. This time, this Tea Party has decided not to sit on the sidelines and just vote and be the kingmakers. They've gotten involved. They're trying to infiltrate, or have infiltrated, the Republican Party, and they're running candidates. So that's the interesting question moving forward. They're in the elected positions. They're not just the kingmakers being out there, the 30% shifting and deciding who wins elections.
Well, now that the proverbial dog has caught the proverbial bus, what are we going to do now, Dave?
Well, first of all, Marty, I think we ought to at least take credit for getting Dan Carter elected. He appeared on the show several times.
Absolutely.
Probably couldn't have been elected unless he was on the show.
Absolutely.
Tony Boucher, same thing, on the show. How many times? At least 2 or 3, right?
Quite a few times.
We probably got her elected, and probably got John Shaban elected too. So Marty Heiser show is really turning up the heat.
I had it all figured out, because I figured, all those guys that I said were chickens because they didn't come on the show and they were going to lose. It was all set up, but never spiked the ball on the 5-yard line. I guess is the story.
Yeah, I'll find myself, and this is an epic moment, but agreeing with Al on one thing. That
wait. Mark this tape. Put it on your blog
put it
now.
on YouTube.
Yeah.
If the Republicans can't really close the door on the opposition this year, then they probably won't be able to in the future. For 2 years, we've suffered a frontal assault on civil liberties and freedom in this country in a way that we probably have never experienced in history. Whether it was the bailouts, the reach of the government, and everything in between. And yet, at the end of the day, and after all the dust settles, California is falling off the coast. That state right now is in such extreme financial difficulty. They've created a dependent state, and their debt is going to bankrupt that state. And now you end up with Jerry Brown, who is probably one of the biggest idiots I've ever seen in the public arena. You had people that, like Barbara Boxer, that survived, right? And you had the opportunity to put Meg Whitman in there.
Senator Boxer.
Yes.
She worked very hard. She worked hard for that. So it's Senator.
Did you see
Boxer.
the YouTube clip on that?
I did,
Which is just priceless.
Hey, can we get that Boy Scout? Eagle Scout, man. Hey, pardon me, Indian, could you? It's Chief, ma'am.
Yeah.
Did you see that one, Al?
No. I
I'll
haven't
send
seen
it
that.
to you. It's a
Sure.
good one.
Yeah, no problem.
But again, he's got the last laugh because she got reelected, and the other lady spent $60 million, and Jerry Brown, who you describe in a not so pleasant way, got reelected, and the other lady spent $141 million to get elected.
Right. So the point being that, with
Al's right and you're wrong.
with everything that
Well, you know,
the message, the Republicans had the best message ever. They get the government out of our life. You know, in fact, you want to bet me $5 I can convert Al right now?
Hold on, let's.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
I'll
you
bet
can't.
you
We
$5.
can't bet. We can't bet.
Yes,
on it.
we can.
Okay,
Why
okay.
not? I bet
Okay.
all the time.
So here's every time I sit down with a liberal, I tell them the same thing. I say, well, look, you know, I've known you for years, and you know I care about you, and you know. So, but aside from that, who do you think can make better personal decisions for your life? You or me? And they always look at me and say, well, of course I can make better decisions for myself than you can. So okay, so why would you turn that authority over to a government that's 2,000 miles away, that doesn't have your best interests at heart, that's motivated to achieve entirely opposite goals than yours? Why would you give them that authority? And that's what the Democrats do time and time again. Every time the Democrat walks in and votes for a Democrat, they're turning over more power, more authority to an entity that's not looking out for them.
Al,
I think here's the.
Did that work?
Absolutely not. Here's the perfect example why Republicans and you primarily and certain other, the guy down at the far end, just don't get it. The people who voted in this election didn't necessarily vote, in my opinion, for a party. They voted because of frustration. They're frustrated because of the state of the economy. 1994, they were frustrated about the state of the economy. People want these issues addressed. They probably felt most likely the last 2 years the issues that they were talking about weren't properly addressed, and now you're giving somebody else an opportunity to get it addressed. And if they don't get the job done, guess what's going to happen in 2 years? They're going to get their tails kicked. Tea Party candidate, the senator I talked about in Alaska, the write-in candidate, did she win? Yes, and she won as a write-in candidate. Here in Connecticut,
it's a very difficult name to spell.
Yeah, I mean, here in Connecticut,
He's a Republican.
These Tea Party candidates, there were Tea Party candidates. There was, in the 2nd District, Labriola, whose campaign manager was the head of a Tea Party organization here, got crushed. And Tom
Why
Marsh.
can't we focus on Kentucky and Florida?
Well, Tom Marsh, an individual who I think, in my opinion, if you want to say that Foley lost, maybe they should look towards Tom Marsh. He picked up 17,000 votes. He was at all the Tea Party events. Again, I just think if you want to talk about people's frustration, what you want to get from this election, it's like, look, you got to stop talking about the partisanship and the ideologue and all that stuff and stop beating yourself on the chest saying it's the Republican way. I don't think people think like that. They're like, hey, look, we're suffering out here. There's unemployment out here. We just want somebody to get in here and just get this thing done. We don't care if you're a D or an R. We just want our issues addressed. And they probably felt in the last 2 years that the situation wasn't addressed properly, so they got thrown out. And who's to say in 2 years from now, the Republicans just won't get tossed right out that picked up these seats. So don't take this stuff as an ideologue, as a partisan thing. Take it as like, look, people are suffering out there, and they just want somebody to get in here and help them out.
I guess my question, and I agree with what you're saying, but my question is, why, if they're in trouble and suffering, why would they continue with the policies that are already in place? I mean, I guess they're doing the math and they're saying, well, the Democrats haven't been in there all that long, and maybe they're willing to give them a longer chance. Caller, are you there?
Yes, I am.
You have a question?
Yes, I do. I'm not so sure I blame the voters. I tend to blame the town committees that put these folks up. They are not putting up candidates that reach out to the average Joe. The guys who have been in forever just stay in forever, but the town committees themselves are the ones that give us the ones to vote for in a primary or in a regular election, and it doesn't give you a whole heck of a lot of choice. Have we ever thought of putting none of the above and start from scratch each time?
That's a good point. No, I appreciate your. Thank you very much for the call, Bob. I think that's kind of what you're saying.
No, I'm saying. Well, I would say to the caller, you know, if you're conservative, get down to your Republican town committee and get on it. The way you change this is from the bottom up. That's what the Tea Party's all about. They'll be in the town committees. They're on the town committees. They will do nothing else but grow. And the reason they will is because the Republican town committees in the state are largely wakes. I've been to enough of them. I've spoken to them. It's like, in many cases, like going to a wake. I thought I was going to a beehive, and I very quickly saw that I'm not. So I think they should be points of activism and promote the principles of the Republican Party in the community, get the community to understand what the Republican Party is about, what the principles and conservative principles are all about. And the way to do that is get conservatives on there who are going to work, find good candidates in the community, convince them that the party now stands for something, and get them in there and get them running. Because with good conservative people that stand for something, they will make a clear distinction against the Democrat in the race, and I think that's where it's got to get to. Unfortunately, we haven't seen a turnout yet that we're going to need to see, and unfortunately, American people don't move until their pocketbooks hurt. And we can be certain now that we've elected all Democrats in the state, that the real budget issues are not going to get addressed. Mr. Malloy is not going to address them if he's governor. So the $3 billion in debt that we are now is only going to grow. They aren't going to cut. Eventually, it's going to come home to roost. It's going to come home to a roost in a major way on the federal level.
See, you're doing exactly what he's talking about. You're pounding your chest saying policy, you know, philosophy, philosophy, philosophy.
No, it's just you have to live within your means.
And you're saying, you know, people don't give a dime's worth of difference between Republicans or Democrats. All they know is that they're hurting, and they want someone to address those issues.
You ask the average person.
I'm just saying.
We'll do this. I'll challenge you to this, and I'll bet you $5 on this. How about that?
Well,
We'll go out any place you want to go to. And I'll find 10 people, and we'll put it on camera. I'll say, do you know who your state rep is? Do you know who your state senator is? And I'll bet the majority of them will say no. But they know one thing, but when you're hurting in your pockets, and you say, hey, look, I want change, they don't care. They say, the person who's in, he's not helping me out, I want somebody else in. They're not looking at the D or the R. They want somebody else in. And to the caller's suggestion that it's about town committees, I agree to a certain extent, but let's remember something. Let's not have selective memory here. We had a primary for the U.S. Senate. Okay, we had a primary for the 4th Congressional District. We had a primary for the 5th Congressional District.
We had debates right here.
We had debates right here. And how is those primaries settled? By the people in August. They voted. Yeah. So they voted these candidates in. You voted for Linda McMahon. I said it was a bad idea. I liked Rob Simmons. You voted for Linda McMahon. You get what you paid for. You get what you voted for. The people had a choice in a lot of these races.
I know it's speculation, but Rob Simmons beats Blumenthal?
I think it would have been a better race. Look,
he would beat Blumenthal once the Vietnam thing.
The high negatives that Linda McMahon had among women, there's no way you can.
Right.
It was done. It was a done deal. I've said it here week after week after week after week. WWE was a big albatross around her neck. You know, the negatives that high, it wasn't going to work. Rob Simmons, I think he would have gave a better challenge to Blumenthal.
All right, bring some balance to all this discussion. You got the right wing over here, you got the left wing over here, and they're ready to fly away with us. You give us some scholarly balance to all this.
I mean, they're both kind of
right. And Dave, where do you put him? Really? He's just, you know, we're all going to die tomorrow. You know, the sky is falling.
They're both kind of right, and they're both kind of wrong. It is ideological for about 30% of people that call themselves Democrats and about 30% of the people that call themselves Republicans. And the 40% who are independent are, like Al says, they care about their pocketbook, or they don't care who's left and who's right. But that's the problem. Because when people get elected, they get elected because of money they've been given to get elected and the favors they do and the lobbyists that come visit them. And when they go hard right, or in the case of these last 2 years, go hard left, the people who are going to make the decision, because you can't win an election with 30% of the vote, you need to get to 50, that group is going to hold them accountable. They're starting to do it more now. I think that's the essence of this independent. It's more than just Tea Party. It's Tea Party, it's independent, because the Tea Party is not quite defined. We know in broad brushes about
Absolutely.
constitutional stuff, but I think the liberal media and the mainstream media, however you want to characterize it, has done them an injustice, because they painted them as conservatives, and I don't think they're all conservatives. I don't think they're big friends of insurance companies and big banks and Wall Street, and I think if the Republicans go in and start cozying up to those groups in the way they did maybe in the late 90s, they're going to hear it from that group again. I think they are reform people and Reagan Democrats, but they do believe in this kind of libertarian receding of big government. That's one thing they have in common.
Well, we believe it's successful. I mean, you look at the 80s and the Reagan Revolution brought basically 20 years of prosperity, and that came to an end when the leadership got sloppy, cozy, corrupt, and it all came down after the turn of the century. But I mean, that's a successful formula, because it's the formula that built this country and developed this country as rapidly as it is. Freedom for the individual, freedom in the marketplace, the entrepreneur.
Okay, let's talk a little bit nationally. I mean, this has been an historic shift. I mean, we looked at the headlines. Barack Obama.
This one's impossible. That he's humbled. Absolutely impossible.
Okay.
Just telling you.
Well, all right. Well,
that'll last a day.
Well, I'm sure Mr. McConnell and the Republicans isn't very humbled either. Stuff he's saying is not very bipartisan.
This separation of powers, this checks and balances that our founding fathers put into our Constitution is pretty brilliant stuff, really. I mean, I think that there was a message that was sent loud and clear, maybe not so loud and clear from Connecticut, but certainly across the country. There's been a huge shift. And what are people really saying? Al, what do you think, from your perspective, people are really saying? I have an idea.
I'll repeat this again, and you look at my track record here on this show. It might be wise to hear me out here again. I think people are saying, look, we're having a problem here with the economy. Unemployment is high. We need to address this stuff. The last people who were in the last 2 years did not properly address this. We need some relief to some of it. We need to take care of some of these issues that are happening. We need people in there who are going to address it. A certain party said, hey, we're going to come in here, we're going to do these things. Now, the election is over. Now it's time to put up or shut up. You got 2 years to do it. And if you don't do it, expect something else to happen in 2012 that might not be very popular to the Republican Party. They'll throw them out also. Again, I just think people are hurting, and when people are hurting and the economy's bad, they want somebody to come in here and just fix it.
Well,
Caller, are you there?
Yeah,
Yeah, go right ahead.
all right. If these politicians don't work for you this time, you kick their ass out until next time.
There you go.
And that's what you do all the time. You got to get rid of them.
I think you're right.
So you remember?
I think you're right.
Right. That's absolutely right. There's no jobs, there's nothing.
So you remember 2 weeks ago when you assaulted Michael Steele?
Listen, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
2 weeks ago when you assaulted Michale Steele?
I wouldn't characterize it as an assault. I would characterize it as
mugging.
Yeah, you mauled him.
Hey, I had, how often are you on the fire Pelosi bus? Which, by the way, did happen.
Yeah,
which is good.
Okay,
at least
I'll rephrase it. So you remember when you mauled Michael Steele? What did you tell him? You said, so in 2 years, if the Republicans don't turn this thing around, can we throw them out too? So to the caller's point, you had his interest at heart.
So me and this guy, we're on the same wavelength.
Exactly.
Wherever you are, caller, right here. You'd have done the same thing.
Well, I'll tell you my take on the election. I woke up Wednesday morning and I saw Barney Frank, the architect of the financial collapse, still in office. Yeah. I saw Harry Reid, the architect of the worst health care bill ever put forward in this country, still in office.
And he said that we lost the war in Iraq while men were still getting, taking heavy fire in the field.
And I saw Jerry Brown, a liberal retread for the past 50 years, in office. And I'll tell you exactly what's going to happen in California. They will get to the verge of default, and you're going to need a government bailout, a Washington bailout of the California debt situation. They're going to sink the entire ship.
Okay, so a whole sea of change throughout the heartland And you're going to focus on what happened in California, and what about the glass half full part of that equation?
Well, look, we have so much legacy debt in this country. It has to be addressed. California is the epicenter of that debt that will collapse at some point in the next 5 to 10 years. And unless that gets addressed, I mean, it's going to be a Washington bailout on that one too.
Well,
you know, I mean, we heard today that between Freddie and Fannie, it's a $680 billion bailout yet to come. So these numbers are staggering numbers. You know, the Federal Reserve came out yesterday and said that we're going to have $600 billion of quantitative easing. We talked about that 2 or 3 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
And all that is, so what we're doing is the government is printing about $2 to $2.5 billion a day,
right,
and just sprinkling it, you know, helicopter bend from a helicopter,
right,
distributing that across the economy, thinking that that somehow is going to stimulate demand. All it's going to do is destroy your purchasing power. In the metals market, the commodities market spoke pretty loud and clear in the last 2 days.
What's gold up to now?
It was up
1,200,
No.
1,300?
$13.85 was up $47 today.
Yeah, it was up big.
Silver's up to $26. Oil's up to $87. Copper prices are up to $4 a pound. Everywhere you look, beef prices are
Why are
hitting
house
near record
prices
highs.
not going up?
Massive surplus. I mean, you're sitting on, what, 7 million homes that are may or may not be empty. Nobody really knows.
Right.
It's kind of an unknown inventory right now.
Right.
But what you're facing with quantitative easing is the complete dilution and demise of the dollar. And so, the U.S. government said to China, look, you either devalue your currency, or revalue your currency, or we're just going to print more money. China held fast. We printed more money. We're taking the U.S. dollar right down the tube.
All right, so here's a scenario. Here's a happy scenario. Here's a rosy glasses, butterflies, and chirping birds
Love your
scenario.
optimism.
You know, we sort of, okay, we had a bubble. We've had bubbles before. Yeah, here's the Fed set plan using $600 billion to spur economy, or so they say. Bid to pump money into banking system carries fiscal and political risks, which I think you've outlined there. And by the way, there's Barack Obama right next to
Humbled, right?
Humbled, billion to spur. I don't know. I got a bad feeling about this cover of the New York Times.
Humbled.
But here's a rosy scenario. There have been bubbles before. The dot-com bubble. End of the 80s was another real estate bubble. There's been all kinds. I mean, the Dutch had a run on tulip, bulbs. So there have been booms and busts. It's part of our free market economy. Things are going to get overvalued, but here comes the marketplace, and being allowed, it will self-correct, and it will work itself out.
Just like it did in Zimbabwe. $1 trillion bill to buy a loaf of bread.
Okay, and then you can look at the 1930s in Germany, where a bushel of money, Deutschmarks, had to buy a loaf of bread. But the point is that there have been these bubbles before, but we have been able to work ourselves out of it. As a matter of fact, right now I'm already seeing that buyers are beginning to come into the market when you just talk about houses. I mean, all of us, if we bought a house. Remember, if you're trying to buy a house in the late 80s, the prices, you thought, my gosh, we're going to be renting an apartment forever. Who can afford these monstrosities? What if you were starting out right now, newly married, looking to buy a house? The prices are right, they're readily available, and interest rates are unbelievably low. You just have to qualify for a mortgage. But I think that we can work our way out of it. Politically, yes, we wanted to punish Bush, so the collective self-interest of the country voted in Barack Obama. He tried to go hard left, but that now has been self-corrected. Didn't the stock market go up 200 points after this election, something like that?
Well,
so aren't we on the cusp of seeing the recovery take hold? People are having a better
The stock market has to go up 20% in the next year to keep pace, just to keep you even in terms of your purchasing power.
Well, you're saying inflation is running away?
Here's what I'm saying, Marty.
That's what everyone says. It's going to, but
here's
it hasn't.
the rosy scenario, how we work our way out of this debt and all the rest.
Yeah.
Okay, if you pay $1 a second, how long will it take to pay back $1 trillion? 32,000 years.
Look,
32,000. You going to be around, Marty?
I know, but we've run deficits before.
Not like this.
Okay, not like this. You definitely put the deficit on steroids, and we've run it into overdrive. But if we can hold the line on spending, we already have, what, $250 billion in the stimulus money that hasn't even been spent yet?
But in the next,
we can take that off
in the next
table.
8 years, the federal spending is asymmetric. It's not even linear.
See, I don't even... Paul, what the heck is he talking about? Asymmetric and not linear spending. You're a college professor.
This is linear. Linear is like this. Okay. Asymmetric is
it's
like
warped
that.
Curve. The projection when the government comes out and
those of you at home, sell everything, move to Argentina.
Sell, Mortimer, sell.
You're going nuts.
Well, here's the point.
Bobby,
here's the point. It's
you really depressed me, Dave. I swear. Can we cut his mic?
That's why nobody invites me to parties anymore.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, really.
Dave the Doubter.
Yeah, really.
In 1992.
How are you, Dave? Fine. Sell everything. We're all good.
In 1992, Jim Carville, when he was running the Clinton campaign, said to Bush, "It's the economy, stupid."
Yeah.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
And it is the economy, stupid. And the frustration will not end until the economy picks up. The problem for the Democrats, the inherent problem for the Democrats, is they say and they promise that get us elected and we're going to turn this around, we're going to create jobs. That's not what government does. The economy is going to fix itself, right? The market's going to fix itself. The housing market's going to fix itself. Consumer confidence is going to fix itself. So when the Democrats go there and promise, they're setting themselves up for failure. And the same would go for the Republicans. Unless they get out of the way and allow the market to correct itself, because that's the only way the market corrects itself. Unemployment on the eve of World War II was still around 20% with all the programs. It made people feel better during the Great Depression, but it didn't get us out of the Great Depression. It was World War II.
Yeah.
And the same is going to happen now. It'll correct itself when it corrects itself.
So we just got to let it happen.
And if you're promising, I'm going to go to Washington and do something that's going to create a job, it's not going to happen unless it's public works, infrastructure, or something like that.
Okay, my rosy butterflies, bird chirping scenario, you were over here mumbling to yourself, no. Share your thoughts with the vast viewing public as well.
Well, they've come in now in the last couple of years and they have over $1 trillion in new debt each of the last couple of years, 1.4, 1.6. Right. And the projection from the government is that it's going to be over $1 trillion for the next 10 years. It's unsustainable. It's absolutely unsustainable.
I know, but
that cannot be paid. The whole shooting match has to be put on the table, and it has to be addressed. And if they don't address it, they're basically going to drive inflation through the roof. Because what he's doing now, when your Federal Reserve is buying when your central bank is buying your Treasury's debt, you are short-circuiting the system, and you are already on the doorstep of bankruptcy. And when they're going to have to keep doing that because of $1 trillion in deficit every year, who's going to buy this debt? It's going to be left to the Federal Reserve to buy. They're monetizing the debt, and they're going to drive up inflation.
I know, people do want to buy our debt because we have a huge economy and we sell stuff.
So listen, the Europeans are trying to put themselves into shape. The Chinese can stop buying our debt any day they want, or they can start reducing.
Yeah, but that's what they said about the Japanese back in the 80s too. Yeah. They could stop.
It's not going to go on forever, Marty. They've gone to a dimension. They've gone to a dimension that they've never been in before. It's unsustainable at over $1 trillion a year for the foreseeable future. The whole national budget has to be looked at. Defense, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. And the sooner they get it all on the table and they streamline them down and they cut back to the way those programs were originally designed, the better the chance we have of getting out of this. Otherwise, we're going to get into a hyperinflation. It's guaranteed we're going to get into an inflation scenario. You can't get out of this. There's no way out.
Okay, but didn't we just have an historic election where we had this big shift where people heard a little bit of what you're saying, heard what you guys were talking about, and threw the guys out that have been spending all this money, even these guys that are 15-term incumbents, and yet
some of them,
to half of them out.
But in Connecticut, they won't do it until the listen.
Connecticut is a small little state on the East Coast. I mean, there's a sea of red.
I got my first money market fund in 1981, and it was paying me 19%. You got a 10% raise that year, you thought you got junk. You got nothing, right? The prime interest rate was 21%. And it got that way pretty quick in the late 70s, and all of a sudden it found that way. We will get there again and surpass those numbers.
Okay, caller, you're on the air. What question do you have for this rogues gallery?
Well, tell Professor Bolano, the only way the market's going to correct itself is if the goddamn government put in 2 years ago gets out of the way and lets the free market do it.
think that's what I
Because
said.
unfortunately, we have an ideologue in as president who wants to move this country to some second-rate, socialist, democratic, European-style economy. And the only way we're going to do it is if we let the free market go forward.
Okay,
Thank you, Marty.
you-
Have a good night.
okay, hold on. While you're on TV there, I'm a simple man. Are you still there?
North Korea.
I'm a simple man right here, ladies and gentlemen. This is a satellite picture of the Korean Peninsula.
Oh my God.
You got South Korea right down here. That, my friends, is free market, free enterprise, and capitalism. You have North Korea, which is right here. That's where the government controls things. That's where that Elvis Presley wannabe great and wonderful leader where they dance around like morons, that's where the government controls everything. Free market, government control. Now this is reality. This is a test. Where do you want to live? Cotton candy, movies, automobiles, and, you know, intense little guys that win Olympic medals? Or these guys that, you know, hang out with Gaddafi and spend all their money on...
living in the dark.
So I'm telling you. Now, I'm not like an alarmist like Bob here is and all his buddies. I'm kidding you, Bob. I'm kidding you. But I'm telling you, government control doesn't work. It never has, and it never will. We've got to allow the free market to expand, and if we do, and we rein in spending like we're talking about, which I think this election was all about, I think America's brightest days are still ahead of us. I'm not quite as doom and gloom. I mean, in the Civil War, we lost over 500,000 people. The entire South was devastated. We came back from that. Sure. We can come back from this too, and I think I'm beginning to see it in this last election. Now, where am I wrong, Jim?
I think you're right. I think we are going to come out of it.
We can, but
Yeah, let's end the show right there.
listen, we can, but historically it's been a free market and capitalism and enterprise that have built this country. That's how you came back from the Civil War.
Yeah.
That's how we came back in the 80s after it closed down there. The answer is
well, that
not
was your
more government
19%
involvement.
interest. The prime rate was up to 20% by the time Jimmy Carter got through with the economy.
Correct.
And then
And
Paul
between
Volcker
Paul
came
Volcker
in. There you
and,
go.
and Ronald Reagan's policies, it got back on track. I mean, that's what built this country, and that's what we need to do again. We really need to
well,
free
I
the
think
economy up.
you know, this is a good start. Al, where are we
You talked
wrong?
about cutting spending, and Bob says something that is actually the third rail that none of these candidates have talked about. They talked about, we want to cut spending, we want to cut. They didn't get into specifics. And again, you're in, and now you got to back it up. And like he said, and he's absolutely correct in this, I can't believe I'm actually saying he's correct on something here. When you talk about the government, it comes down to defense and entitlement programs such as Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and then you got, after all that's done, that's the majority. I think it's what, 3.5 trillion, or it's a big chunk of the budget. And after that, you got like a little 15% that's actually meaningless. So if you really want to do some cutting, you're going to have to get into that. And when you get into that, that's going to be the third rail. You're going to talk about cutting benefits, maybe privatizing Social Security, things that are going to like freak some people out. Or you got some of the more extreme stuff, like let's dismantle the Department of Education, dismantle the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Bush tax cuts. If you extend those things, the government's going to lose out on $700 billion. How are you going to deal with that? You got some real.
See, that's a long way to look at it.
Not their money.
I'm just saying you got some real tough choices you're going to have to make.
Caller, you're experiencing, caller, a kumbaya moment. Al Robinson, rabid, far left-wing extremist, editor of Hat City Blog, has just had a kumbaya
I told
moment.
you I could convert him on the show today.
It's a beautiful
I'm still not
thing
giving you
with
$5.
Bob and Duffy from the Tea Party. Are you still there, caller? Yeah, you had a question. Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Yes, I wanted Professor Bolano to remind the group tonight that there will be another post-election panel at the Ethan Allen Hotel on November 18th, and with an esteemed panel including Professor Bolano. So just thought I'd say that. Thank you.
Excellent. What group or what organization? Where can they go to get more information? Oh, you left. Well, what's this panel?
The Chamber of Commerce has a business-to-business
Do we know
event
who's funding
at
that?
Ethan Allen.
Is that being funded by what's that, the American group, or what is it called? You know that that Al's all concerned about.
I don't know which one. He's concerned with.
Or some shadow organization.
Yeah, what
It
was
was
the shadow
famous-
right?
it's-
America right?
No, it's funded
or
with walking
He
money.
paid for the podium or
Who's the
something
Chamber
like
of
that.
Commerce? Do you have a date and time? Or
We do. In fact, I was going to ask you if you want to come down and tape it.
Love to.
We'll give you
Love
the first
to.
question from the audience. It's November 18th. It starts at 4 o'clock at Ethan Allen. It's the panel prior to the business-to-business event.
Okay.
Here we go.
Carl, are you there? You have a question?
Yeah, we're here. Listen, I got a question about
there we go.
Alaska's race. If I understood the one of the guests you have correctly, he said that Lisa Murkowski won it in Alaska.
Okay, good question. Good question. Let me put that to you. Yeah, Murkowski's in. Who can spell Murkowski, though? I hear they don't spell it
From
right.
my
It doesn't
understanding,
count.
she is in. And again, she's in on a write-in.
Another
so-
win for the Republicans.
No, the
Well,
write-ins.
it's-
Well, we
it's-
don't know.
And again, you have to write. You got to write that person's name in. That's
No,
some
but I
dedication.
saw
We don't know what
the
they look
numbers.
like
I saw the numbers. It's pretty overwhelming.
But they're not going to open those write-ins and start reading them until the 10th. So,
The funnest thing to watch is
Double
Sarah
name,
Palin
yeah,
being
yeah.
mad at Murkowski.
Well,
I said some bad
It was
blood.
big oil
There's a
money that
serious
bought it from
catfight going on
Murkowski.
there.
I mean,
Well, Murkowski's dad had the Senate seat at first, and kind of,
Daddy
you know,
gave it
like
to
you give, your daughter the secondhand car or something, and the dad gave the daughter a Senate seat, and then your guy Miller comes in there, and he's
My
all
guy.
hot to trot.
My guy.
He's your guy. I saw
arrest
the
and
Tea
report.
Party
Sounds
bus
like a
up
very
there.
articulate, knowledgeable guy. I mean, he's got a great background and all the rest of it. He was a good candidate. He got gummed up in some scandal that I heard last
See,
week.
there you Tea Party guys go. You come in, we got
Hey, listen, all the candidates aren't going to be great the first time around by any means. But the good news is we're not going away, and we're going to keep finding better and better people in the community and keep teeing them up.
All right, Dave, last thoughts?
Reagan lost elections too, and look what a leader he became.
All right, Al?
You got 2 years, or you're getting booted.
Yeah.
All right. On that cheerful note, I want to thank my guests for this inspiring. I want to thank the callers for calling in. We're calling this show the Marty Heiser Show, and I just want to make clear that that's a very narcissistic move. That was not my idea.
That was all your idea.
There are powers at work right here that are taking this thing to a whole nother level. I'm not very confident with. But thanks for tuning in. And next week, I don't know, we'll discuss most likely a play at
Cablevision.
Richfield High School. And also you can tune in on Cablevision, all you blue bloods down there in Greenwich. I mean, come on, Foley, get your guys together and win the governorship.
Wednesday,
We're gonna-
4:30.
Wednesday, 4:30 on Channel 88. Channel 88. I didn't know they went that high. But Channel 88, Wednesday at 4:30. Tune in and watch all you guys in New Canaan and Wilton and Norwalk and everything else. And then we're going to get on charter if one of you guys can get it together and go sign up.
They've seen the show.
You guys are all volunteers, right?
we can do that.
Is anyone here getting paid?
We can do that.
Rich? No. All right, thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you next time on the Marty Heiser Show.